Donald Trump has promised to drain the swamp in Washington, yet several of his cabinet picks look like they're going to do the exact opposite. So in this video, instead of looking at all of the terrible choices that are rumored to be the next Secretary of State, I'm going to take a minute to look at the one person who should be the obvious choice for the next Secretary of State, Tulsi Gabbard. If you're not familiar with her, Gabbard is a Democratic Congresswoman from Hawaii. She is also a veteran and has served on 2 tours of duty in Iraq with the Hawaii National Guard. Now, because of this, she not only understands the hardships that our troops face, she is also a vocal critic of regime change and of the pattern of endless war that is promoted by our current foreign policy.
I know firsthand, during my first deployment to Iraq, I served in a medical unit where every single day I saw the high human cost of war. Coming home, serving in Congress now, we're dealing with budgets, and we're seeing every day the economic impact of how all of these resources that we as a country have spent in these interventionist wars of regime change have cost our country and our economy and our ability to really invest and nation build here at home.
Gabbard is also not afraid to call out the U.S. government for its failure to hold its close ally, Saudi Arabia, accountable for supporting and promoting the ideology that fuels terrorist groups like ISIS and Al-Qaeda.
What is the United States doing to hold Saudi Arabia accountable for being the #1 promoter of radical Islamic extremism, not only in their own country, but around the world, spending hundreds of billions of dollars in funding madrasas and schools and books and media outreach to try to influence people towards this ideology that's fueling ISIS, fueling Al-Qaeda?
Gabbard has respect for both foreign and local lands, and she has been a vocal critic of the Dakota Access pipeline.
The impact of the Dakota Access pipeline is clear. Energy Transfer Partners, the company that's constructing the Dakota pipeline, has a history of serious pipeline explosions which have caused injury, death, and significant property damage in the past decade. The future operator of the planned pipeline, Sunoco Logistics, has had over 200 environmentally damaging oil spills in the last 6 years alone, more than any of its competitors.
And finally, Gabbard recently introduced legislation to prevent the U.S. government from using taxpayer dollars to fund moderate rebels in attempts to overthrow foreign governments. And the best part about it is she named it the Stop Arming Terrorists Act.
Under U.S. law, it is illegal for you or me or any American to provide any type of assistance to Al-Qaeda, ISIS, or other terrorist groups. If we broke this law, we'd be thrown in jail. Yet the U.S. government's been violating this law for years, directly and indirectly supporting allies and partners of groups like Al-Qaeda and ISIS, with money, weapons, intelligence, and other support in their fight to overthrow the Syrian government.
So did Donald Trump. When you met privately with Tulsi Gabbard last week to talk about her recent legislation, I don't know if you realized that you had the perfect candidate for Secretary of State standing right in front of you. But the thing is, if you're still planning on draining the swamp, and if you honestly want to end the current pattern of endless war that is fueled by overthrowing foreign governments and ignoring the consequences, well, then you would start looking at candidates for Secretary of State who share the views you claim to have, and you would stop looking at candidates who are complete and utter neocons.